Welcome to another video. This one is going to be about how you can transfer player skills that you learned through playing, becoming a pro player, maybe semi-pro, etc., and taking them into coaching, because maybe you're a player who wants to get into coaching. And I'm not going to focus as much as on the specific in-game stuff, like what hero is good, what you should do on a specific hero on a specific map, because the meta will always change, and this video is supposed to be timeless, if that makes sense. So the stuff you learned when you became a player, you start with when you want to become a coach. Basically, you want to start with discovering how you learned everything. You want to discover what the process was when you started learning, when you were an amateur, or maybe went from a casual to a pro, and every step in between that. You want to see what goals you had, basically, and what you did wrong, what you did good, etc. You want to reflect on everything. And when you know how the journey went for yourself, you can then build on top of that, basically, by learning how other players learned as well. And one of the first things you'll realize as a coach, or when you try to become a coach, is that most of the time you're translating one idea from one person, maybe yourself even, to another person. And it's not that you give new ideas all the time. You're not supposed to teach all the time. Sometimes you're supposed to motivate, sometimes you're supposed to support, not in a motivating sense, but more in a ethical way, or not ethical, but you're supposed to be someone that the players can rely on and be a stepping stone, basically. You'll often think in the beginning that you're supposed to teach, when you're not supposed to teach, or that maybe you're trying to change the environment in a way that's not needed. For example, if the players are feeling down after a match, it's okay to feel down after a match if it's appropriate for the situation, of course. And just because someone is sad or someone is angry, etc., it doesn't mean that you must make them happy. You're not supposed to put yourself on fire for others, basically. And you have to realize that someone else's problems doesn't become your problems. Instead, you're helping them overcome them, basically. You're helping other players become better players by becoming better persons and learning more about the game. Maybe you're advising them, you're not teaching them all the time. Maybe you're reminding them as well. And you'll build up a toolkit, basically. You'll build up the way you speak with them. You'll find that you can't speak the same way you do with every player when you coach as you did maybe with your old teammates. Some players come from different cultures, different backgrounds, maybe different games, etc. And maybe they don't view the world the same way you do. So in order to be able to teach them stuff, in order to advise them and so on, you'll have to, as I said, learn how to translate one idea into another person's tongue, basically, if that makes sense. You'll be like leader for them, and not in a way that is commanding or shouting and so on, because sometimes I've been asked, how do you stay angry or something, something silly as that, because you're not supposed to be angry as a coach. You're not supposed to be 24/7 scolding your players. You're not supposed to be babysitting them either. You're supposed to treat them like adults, because when you're coaching OWL, you're working with adults. And for example, if you're coaching adults in OWL, you're not supposed to put them under the same rules as you'd put an infant or a child under. You want to trust them as well, and you want to show them respect, and you want to have that a mutual connection, basically. And that mutual respect, trust, and so on, those bonds are a two-way street, if you know what I mean, because if you don't show trust, a player won't trust you, because a player will always know what you're thinking or feeling. Maybe not thinking, in exact details, but a player can sense if you're lying to them or if you're not lying to them. You'll want to become selfless as well. For example, if you're a support player, not support role as in role in Overwatch, but if you're a supportive player that gives resources to your star player, for example, you'll have an easy time to be selfless as a coach, because when you're selfless, it means that you want others to success as well as maybe you succeed. Or, you don't play favorites, if that makes sense. You're not playing a political game or anything. It's more about wanting the best. And you, just like lawyers, for example, they want the truth. And you want the performance, basically. And the best for the players, if it falls into the same category. And there's a lot of things that come into play here. Like, it's not only about how to look at the game or how to play the game, etc. It's also, how do you make someone understand what their teammate is thinking when they're arguing? You need to understand conflict resolution. You need to be able to work with other coaches. So that means you need to be able to understand teamwork yourself and also teach teamwork. And you need to understand how to keep learning something as a coach as well, because if you are introduced to a new meta, you will have to relearn the game, basically. But you can't relearn it the same way as a player does, by trial and error in game. Instead, you're learning by studying the game, and that means analyzing patch notes. You watch VODs, you do analysis on the VODs. And if you want to scout teams, for example, the way I do it is I look at VODs from now and then maybe 3 weeks ago, 1 month ago, even 3 months ago sometimes. And then I do a differential analysis on every week or maybe every match. And the reason for doing that is because you want to find patterns. And by finding the patterns, for example, in what goals a team had, what priority they had on the goals, because you can see what things they focused on removing if they aren't present later in time. For example, if a team struggles with flankers and they struggle with it for 2 weeks and then they have solid control on flankers, well, you notice that there's some difference by the time when they start having control of the flankers. And then you can see how did the week before and after change, and you can sort of see what the coaching in that team thought of and what the players prioritize now. And then it opens up new doors for anti-stratting, which is something that's it's a counter to a counter, essentially. So in Overwatch, you want to adapt on the fly all the time. And if you're defending, you're starting off with a composition that you want to beat the starting composition of the enemy team that you expect. But let's say that they might be able to expect your counter, and in order to counter that, they will need to create another counter. And then you play a game like that. It's basically like chess. But to be able to do that, you must understand how you analyze your own team and how you develop your own strategies and so on. And you might feel that you want to copy a lot of stuff, and that's all fine, but you don't want to be a copycat in the end. You don't want to copy everyone's meta, because in OWL, maybe you're the one to play the first match of a season, and then who are you going to copy if you've had an off season? Well, you need to be able to teach strategies, and you need to be able to keep players motivated, while learning, while making mistakes and so on, because players will make mistakes, play will get, lower focus and so on. And those skills are more personal development skills. You know, you teach someone how to learn how to be focused in game. That requires you to understand how to become focused in the first place. And if you know how to become focused, you can teach it, of course, because if you understand something well enough, you should be able to teach someone else as well. And yeah, to sum it up, transferring the way you transfer player skills is by understanding how you learned everything, understanding why you learned everything, and then figure out how others learn the same things, because in the end players learn the same things. And then lastly, you want to develop a toolkit that allows you to to transmit the message or the ideas to players, you know, for improving whatever they learned, or maybe if they haven't learned it. If you're a ex-pro player and you're teaching amateur players something that you learned, you want to be able to put it in a light that they can see. Otherwise, if the information doesn't reach them, it's pretty much pointless, right? So then you have to focus on body language and so on. And it's as simple as that, basically. It's not very complicated. It's just a lot of self-development you'll have to do, and you have to do a lot of self-discovery. And after you've done that, it's just a few basic techniques on how to talk, how to speak, etc. And that's it.